Creating the nav desk in a rally car is a task I thoroughly enjoy. It takes me a long time, and if you take your time to enjoy it, then the end result will really look good. And looking good, I'm sure, is part of the battle of performing well. So, as a generalization, in rally cars, we tend to regard the original electrics as the best. So we don't touch the original electrics. I've never yet seen a rewired car that was better than the original Volvo. Now this might not be the case for all cars. The 924 Porsche springs to mind as having appalling wiring. But on the Volvo, there is absolutely no reason to rewire the standard electrics. It's all high quality stuff, and indeed in every car I've seen that's rewired, irrespective of who buy, it's always been a lot worse than the original. So what we do is we provide a completely separate feed system for all the additional rally electrics. So we take 12 volts into a block, distribution block here, and then we take our rally wiring off from here. So we have its own independent 12 volts direct from the battery. So our first task is to define what shape we can get away with for the nav desk. And in this instance, I'm going to effectively take it from the top of the crash pad here and pick up on the bottom on this bit of roll bar. Now, if this was a stage car, then I'm pretty sure drilling into a roll bar would be very illegal. This isn't a stage car, this is a road rally car. This roll cage is massively over-specced, and I don't have a problem with putting two M4 tapped holes into my cage to mount the nav desk. But beware, if it was a stage car, I'm fairly sure that would exclude you. Okay, so the shape, and now you've got to think how you're going to mount it. In this case, as you can see, I've been a bit agricultural with it. I've just used a couple of bits of angle aluminium. And what I'm going to use is our favourite method, because all my nav desks are completely removable. This has two functions. One is you can bet your bottom dollar that in a year's time you'll suddenly find some other gizmo that you just have to mount onto the rally desk, and therefore to just unclip it, unplug it and walk away to your bench to work on it is a delight. And if there's ever any electric problems, then equally being able to unplug it and take it away to fault find it is much the nicer method. So we use Zeus fasteners, and I'll show you how those clip on a bit later. So we've defined our shape out of 1.5 mil aluminium, and the way I go about this is we'll offer it up, define where our mounting points are going to be, pilot drill them with a 3.5 mil through the plate, then offer it back up, take those pilot holes through into the mounting points, which in this case is here, here, here and here, and then drill and make the mountings. So we now have a nav desk in situ. Mark up where the no-go areas are, so where you can't get through to the other side. So that's outboard here and here on the mounts, this bit near the bottom of the crash pad, and this section here against the roll cage. So we've used our Zeus fasteners and we defined how it's going to mount. Next we go over to the bench and rough out the layout. Let's go over there. So those are our Zeus fasteners that we'll be using to fix the nav desk to the car with. 4 should be plenty, even on this size. And to be honest, the 140 allows us a generous amount of space. It's rare that we have a nav desk quite this large. Certainly the MX-5 and the 205 GTI we did recently, neither had even half the area we've got available to us right now. There we go. Okay, what kit? Well, we like the Brantz gear. So in goes the International 2 Pro and their clock. And now, of course, their timers have centi-minute options as well, which for those of us running the Curta appreciate greatly. It's very nice having centi-minutes as well as seconds. As we said, the power to the nav desk is completely independent of the rest of the car's electrics. So therefore, we're going to have a main switch for the entire nav desk, which will then operate a relay to power up the fuse bank. When that comes on, we'll put a digital voltage meter in there as well, which helps anticipate problems with your alternator. And our pair of USB sockets. To make earthing easy, we tend to use either a spade bus bar like this or a screw bus bar. And then the only other two switches I'm going to have is going to be for the plot lamp, which we use strips of self-adhesive LEDs, and we'll mount those on the cage above our Navigator's left ear. The reason it's up there is because it can then do two functions. Firstly, the Navigator can use it for plotting on her maps at suitable times. Secondly, when you come into control, you can flick that lamp on and it acts as a marshal light so that the marshals can see very clearly your time card and fill it out easily. All makes for a quicker time control. And the other one will be for the map light, so typical stalk map light. I'll talk more about the relays, of which we're going to use 3 plus 1 as a hot spare, and I'll explain that in greater detail when I rig up the nav desk. So now let's look at how these are really going to fit in. So at the moment we have a piece of aluminium that's the correct shape. We have got the mountings ready to fit and created. Now let's just mark out where this gear is going to go. Okay, so the relays, and it'll become obvious why I'm doing it this way. One is going to go on the front so it's accessible by the Navigator, and then 2 of the relays are actually going to go behind here because they don't need to be accessed by the Navigator. Okay, so mark up, in this case, the 4 M5 holes to secure those, and what will become a grommeted hole through the panel to take the wiring. Our fuse box with 2 M5 screw holes to secure it there. Our USB will go there. Our earth bus bar will actually go behind and use a fix to that hole there. So that'll be behind and out of sight. Then moving up to the real business end, that'll be the main switch for the nav desk, which will then power up the relay, which will then give power to the fuse bank. Our digital voltage meter will go there, and our plot lamp and map lamp switches will go there. In addition, since I have the space, I've pilot drilled 4 more locations for additional switchgear should we need it in the future. That, of course, simply leaves the trip and the clock there and there, not forgetting the holes needed to duct the wiring back through the panel. Obviously, the two resets will be hanging out loose. I have to say, personally, I prefer to take these switches out and mount them on my nav board, my nav desk. But many navigators like to have these floating and put them where they choose to have them. So I tend to leave them like that. So, mark them out and drill all your marked locations into your 1.5mm nav plate. At this stage, we're now ready to make it look pretty, by which we're going to lay black self-adhesive flocking across this and rolling it onto the back there. So that is my next task. Back in a minute. Okay, so here is my last remaining sheet of black flock, which is slightly embarrassing because it's ever so slightly too short for the job. Obviously make sure you've got clean hands. So turn it on its back, offer up your nav desk on its back. And you want about 20mm excess all the way around to fold over. Like so. And then mark it up as to where you're going to cut it. And clean off the surface of your nav desk. Clean off the surface of your nav desk so that there's no grease on it. Okay, and this bit here will be behind the cage, so I'll fill that in a moment, and it shouldn't look too awful, hopefully. and now cut out all the holes that need to be clear of bays. Okay, so we're done. Let's just recap what functionality we have on the front of the nav desk. We have quick release clips, just because I like to be able to take the nav desk out within seconds rather than having to undo fittings. We have, of course, the Brantz trip meter, the Brantz clock. This is the main switch for the entire board. A voltmeter sitting here, a pair of USB outlets, our fuse block, which only uses 6 of the 8 outlets, but we got 2 spare. Our plot light switch and the map light switch, and the relay. I'll come back to that in a minute. This is just a spare mounting here. It's not hooked up to anything. It's just this one that's live. So let's go and look at the wiring. Now, obviously worked to a nice logical wiring diagram. This has my connector, which is 9 out of 11 ways used connector, and then the other 3 wires for the trip meter sensor are on another plug and socket. We show the 3 relays, the switches, the fuse box, and the trip and Brantz clock. So let's actually look at the back of the board to see how we've actually implemented all that wiring. Okay, here we are. There's all our wiring. So we have one 3-way connector here, which is purely dedicated to the trip meter sensor. Everything else goes through this 11-way connector, of which I only use 9. Then we have the back of the fuse box here, which has 2 power feeds. One is purely for the auxiliary lamps, and one is for the rest of the circuits on the rally board there. We have 2 relays here. Now, one is simply the main relay that is energized by the overall switch. So that provides power to the fuse board when the switch is on from that relay. The pier auxiliary lamps that Amy favours, and I actually really like as well, use the H4 halogen bulb. In other words, they have a dipped beam as well as a high beam. So what this means is you need to detect both headlights on and main beam. So this switch here detects when the headlights are on, and then that feeds out to this relay here, is triggered by the main beam signal and toggles between the auxiliary's dip and the auxiliary's main beam. However, most UK regs do not permit you to run dipped beam auxiliary lamps. And so what we do is we carry a standard fuse here. So when we're on UK rallies, we take the dual output relay out and we pop the single outlet relay in. That means we now lose our dipped auxiliary beam. And then this can just get stowed away here. So that is why I've mounted my relays on the front of the board for the piers. If you're not running piers, you're running just a straight auxiliary beam, then you can hide all the relays out the back. Okay, let's go and fit that into the car now. Okay, so here is our 11-way connector up the top here, and this down here is the trip sensor cable. Okay, so we simply connect the 11-way up like so. feed the tripwire through. There we go. Now we connect up the trip sensor. There we are. And there's our main power. So that's those two. Our voltmeter comes on, our USB outlet, our plot and Marshall lamp comes on there. We're just waiting to get the map light, which will reside up here. And our auxiliary lamps are live. So that is our entire nav desk installation all done. Yeah, pleased with that.